So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk about how I've used my engineering power for good now in really trying to make a difference in reaching kids. Because I think education is important, not just for those kids, but it's a national imperative to maintain our prosperity as Americans, okay? So it's a big deal to me. But to tell you a little bit, I was born in South Dakota, but raised in New Mexico. All my grandparents are from Mexico. My dad did go to college, and he was a chemist. My mom didn't have a chance to complete her formal education in Mexico. And like a lot of people, she crossed the river. Back then, the Rio Grande kind of sometimes was dry, and she just took her shoes off, lifted up her skirt, and walked across the river back then. She became a US citizen, learned English, and became very involved. Lucky for me, I became a Girl Scout. And Girl Scouts changed my life. You know, I had a tragic event in my family. My sister, my younger sister, who was smarter than all of us, got sick with meningitis. My sister did not die, but for a little while she was blind, but she had an insatiably high fever that forever altered her brain. So my sister, who was the most special of us all, became special in a different way. And it devastated all of us, but can you imagine it devastated my mother the most, because she was the most like my mother. I mean, she just lit up the room with her energy. So it hit us really hard. So my mother, to get away from that, moved us to another part of the town. But for my mother, while she wanted to get away from the bad memories, for me, that new neighborhood was not Latinos, it was not people that I knew. It was as scary to me as the old neighborhood was to her. And and she moved us in the middle of the year. Oh, it was so tough. But one day, walking home from school, there was a girl in my classroom, and I saw she was wearing a brown uniform and a beanie cap. And she was in my neighborhood, and I said, how come you're here? You don't live around here. And she goes, oh, I'm going to a Brownie meeting. Do you want to go? And my mother, I said, well, I don't know if my mom will let me, right? So she goes, well, go ask. So I went in and I asked my mom, and I asked her like kids ask their moms, their parents, when they think the answer is no. You don't have to say yes, but this girl from school. But to my surprise, my mom said yes, and she just wanted to know where I was. And at the time, my mom really didn't speak much English, and she just spoke Spanish, and our entire family identity was in Spanish. You know, our family was in Mexico. And so I went to the Girl Scout meeting, and remember, I was a scared, frightened girl. Well, the Girl Scout meeting was incredibly organized. You know, there was a sign-in sheet, there was refreshments, there was an activity. And during that activity, we were making sit-a-pons, and I don't know if you guys know what sit-a-pons are. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So basically, you cut up strips of newspaper and fabric, and you weave them together. And so you have something to sit upon, right? Okay. And so we were doing that exercise, and the girl next to me asked for the scissors. And so I handed her the scissors like this. And at that moment, the troop leader said, stop. And she asked the other girls to demonstrate the proper way and the safe way to handle scissors. Okay, now, they demonstrated, and so who knew there were rules to, handle scissors, including things like, not just one rule of how you pass them, but you don't run with them. I mean, wow, who knew? But for me as a young girl who was scared, the world had sort of turned topsy-turvy, to be part of an organization who cared even about me to the point of how I passed scissors, I thought, boy, there's something there for me. And so it just gave me a sense of peace and calm. So I give you that, I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but also as you're thinking about your organizations, and if you're dealing with kids in poverty or in tough situations, you may not realize, but even the structured way that you approach, you are their sanctuary in a lot of chaos. So think about that too when you're thinking about your own organizations. Well, so I really got into it. And then I learned about badges, and boy, this is how you organize, this is how you succeed. And in a way, the Girl Scouts became my manual of how do you navigate the American life, right? Because remember, all my family, every weekend we went to Juarez, Mexico to see family. So I didn't understand how to navigate the American way of life. Well, my mom saw how much I was gaining from Girl Scouts and saw that I was really into it. And again, she did not speak English, but she spoke the universal language of food. So she began bringing food and desserts and stuff. And lucky for me and for us, but the Girl Scout leaders took my mom under her wing and taught her English and helped her learn American citizenship. So when I flew up from being a brownie to a junior Girl Scout, my mother had a flying up episode, a ceremony of her own, and she became an American citizen. And because of that, my mother was the only one of 13 who came from Mexico who learned English and who became an American citizen. So your organizations and your parental outreach can not just change that girl, but can change an entire family. So you can see this amazing shift. Now, one of the things with Girl Scouts is you earn these badges, which I loved, right? And one of the badges I earned early on was in science. And so I grew up in New Mexico, a lot of desert, and there was a space race going on. And there were these different kind of rockets, SD's rockets, that you could order. So I ordered a rocket kit so I could earn my science badge. And so I went out to the desert with my older brother, and I tried many times, and occasionally one would leave the desert sand and pierce this beautiful bright blue New Mexico sky. Well, later on I was getting a cooking badge, and I saw that in cooking it's kind of the same thing as science. You put ingredients together, you apply heat, and sometimes the outcome is good, right? And so because of that, and because of Girl Scouting, and which is basically a nonprofit that reached out to me and my mom, I really learned how to organize myself. I really learned how to navigate the US educational system. And that gave me the courage and the confidence to go on.